Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, hello. My name is Thomas Fargnoli. Tom's fine. The GNN thing is a little bit of a lasagna thing going on, GNN. It's a pleasure for me to be here for the Festival of Storytellers. I have a few stories to tell. I hope you enjoy them. I was not a writer. I certainly didn't plan on writing, but I'll tell you what, my first book turned me into a writer. You see, I was an engineer for over 40 years, software engineer and systems engineer. I also taught as an adjunct professor, computer science courses. I was a magician. I still am. Actually, my daughter and I used to do magic shows for children, for adults. I love doing magic. I love fooling people. But more than that, I use my magic in many ways to make the subject matter of what I'm talking about interesting. I use my magic when I was a deacon, and I was a former deacon in the Catholic Church. Part of the reason I left being a deacon is covered in my first book. But that first book, you see, my life was perfect, as you can sense. Engineer, teacher, magician, deacon. Everything was going well. I had my retirement all planned out. Everything was just as I planned. But then things started to happen. I lost my wife rather tragically to suicide. Never did I imagine being a suicide survivor. Suicide survivor is someone who survived suicide. In other words, someone who's lost their loved one to suicide. When you're grieving, as anyone would grieve their wife or husband over 40 years of marriage, suicide makes it a little difficult. It makes it a little more harder to deal with. People don't want to talk to you. People would love to talk to you, but they feel that, it's, rather they're afraid of hurting your feelings. So again, the grieving process is a little difficult. Also, being a deacon made it even more complex. You see, when you become a deacon in the Catholic Church, you pretty much say that, one wife is it. If I lose my wife, I cannot remarry. I cannot have another relationship that leads to marriage. I knew that going in. But when it happened, I go back to what my wife said. I don't like that rule, Tom. I said, why would you like it? I'm going to die before you. That's what most men think. But when she took her own life, I was faced with this decision. Now, right away, I didn't think, I want to run out and have another relationship. But I learned quickly that there's a difference between loneliness and being alone. I enjoyed being alone. I have always, teaching and throughout my career. But loneliness is when you really can't share your experiences with people. So I had to make a decision. So here I am now, everything going well. And I'll tell you, everything happened at once. My therapist told me to write things down. So I did. And believe it or not, that is what became The Deacon, An Unexpected Life. Now, on my website, you can read about it. You can read about me. You can see some magic tricks too. But this book turned out to be, everyone loved it. It was from my heart. It was my passion. And so as I wrote about it, I've gotten all these great reviews, something that I didn't plan on. And as I mentioned, it wasn't even supposed to be a book. It was going to be just, me jotting down my experiences. So again, after being married for 40 years, serving as a deacon, leaving the diaconate being the deacon, was the last thing on my mind. Being alone, as I mentioned, wasn't a problem for me. But the Catholic Church made it clear I could not stay a deacon and pursue another loving relationship that could lead to marriage. This battle put me in a hospital. It put me in a hospital for open heart surgery. I got a quadruple bypass. So while in the hospital and while recuperating, I realized that no, I'm not meant to be alone. I am meant to share my experiences. I am meant to love and to continue loving. And so the book came together. It's a true story. I did add a little bit of fiction. I added a reporter named Richard. Rick turned out to be someone very special. He interviewed me. And again, as the book unfolds, it becomes very, very clear that Richard's not just an average person. So I think you'll enjoy The Deacon. It's what launched me into writing. And after a while, I realized that, one of the things I loved about being a deacon the most was preaching and talking about God and faith and hope. Well, I realized as a writer, I can still do that. I just don't have to do it in a fancy robe and in church. I can do it anywhere. So along came my second book, Wisdom from the Wick. Now, Wisdom from the Wick is a story that takes place in a tavern called the Warwick Tavern in New Jersey. It's an actual tavern, and most people there call it the Wick. So it's Wisdom from the Wick. It takes place in this tavern. Now, coming to a tavern is the last place that you think you want to talk about religion or about faith or about hope. You want to have a few drinks with your friends. You want to reminisce about the day, the week, or sports game. But what they find is that there's an interesting gentleman in that bar, and people are drawn to him. He's so reachable. He's so, he seems to know what people want to talk about. And he's driven to explain things at their level. He even draws pictures. In fact, I've captured those pictures in the book. There's a number of pictures that are in the book that this particular person draws on the bar to explain various things. I found it exhilarating because now I'm preaching again. In fact, I took 5 years of my homilies in church and folded them into conversations in the bar. So I think you'll enjoy this. I think you'll be able to put yourself into an environment that, you just want to go in and maybe have a drink, but then you might reach out to this individual, John. Now, this is a fiction work. This is Christian fiction, but there's a lot of scripture intertwined in that. And I think you'll enjoy that. Now, these two books have led me to my last book, which is currently in the process. In fact, it'll be released probably the end of February, early March. It takes place in my hometown of Magnolia, beautiful little town. So this small town of Magnolia is a square mile. It's a square mile wide. In fact, one person won the contest of naming it, and they called it 1 square mile of friendliness. Now, this individual, Lou, is in a hospital, and he's 92 years old. He has pains in his chest. He's coughing. And every once in a while, he drifts off. And when he drifts off, he finds himself back in his hometown of Magnolia, smelling the flowers, breathing deeply without coughing. Pain is gone. He has energy that you wouldn't believe. And then he gets woken up and he's back in the hospital with the pain. Now he flip-flops back and forth until he finally realizes that he is in heaven. And heaven begins in his hometown of Magnolia. And this journey to understand heaven is taken by him and his guardian angel. Now, a lot of people have questions about heaven. First of all, is there a heaven? Will I see my pets in heaven? Will I see my family in heaven? My mom, my dad, my son, my daughter? Will there be food in heaven? How will I get around? Will there be sex in heaven? I attempt to give you my view on all of those questions. And I find this book is a smaller book, but I think you'll enjoy this book. And I think it'll provide, like all three of my books, one thing they are all do in common is that they provide a degree of hope amidst all of the unexpected events that we all seem to share in our life. Unexpected events, tragic events. But, through all those tragic events, there are glimpses of hope, glimpses of love. And I just hope you will enjoy them. And I hope that you will also get those glimpses. I think now we can probably open it up to questions. I just want to leave you with one thing. Confucius once said that it is better to save one life than to build a 7-story pagoda. Now, I believe that we spend too much time building pagodas, things we can see and touch and think about up here. But God is not up here. He's down here in your heart. So I believe that when we shift from here to here, we start to see things. We start to see things that we've never seen before. And I believe that my books sort of focus on those types of things. So I will open it up for questions on either of the books, questions on me, questions what I've been through. Just feel free to steer your questions to me, and I'll see what I can do. Okay. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking about my experiences. If someone is having a hard time in their lives, how can your book impart that glimpse of love and hope? Well, because I believe my books are meant for those that are living life every day. They're not special. They're not saints. They're not, known very well. But we all have these things, these events. I've been exposed to tragic events. When I was a deacon, one of my jobs was to go to the hospital and talk to people in the hospital who were suffering. Not only them, but their families. And, I wasn't trained that much on how to help them, but I found just being there, just showing a sense of concern, of empathy, really does help. Now, my books are kind of geared that way. They show common people, Lou, Jim, John, a lot of down-to-earth people, again, in a barroom atmosphere, in a hospital, just daily life and things that can happen to them that bring that glimpse of hope. What is your process of writing your book? Well, each book had a different little process. But generally, the way I do it is I think about what is it that I want to say? And who is it that I want to say it to? So I start to think about that, and I think about, my audience in general. And my audience turns out to be the common person. When I was a deacon, I would preach. A lot of people liked my preaching because, again, it was very down to earth, not very elaborate, And I gave stories that people could share. And so the process of writing the book was listing maybe 10 items or so that I wanted to talk about. 10 items that I think were, paramount on people's minds that they were maybe struggling with. And then what I did? I prayed. Yeah, I prayed. I prayed that I would get insight into each of those areas. And it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes you just stare at a concept, and I'll go on the internet and I'll look at it, and I'll say, a lot of it's out there, but it's not what I want to say quite the same. But I do a lot of reading, and I do capture quotes and build around them. And I bring them down to earth. When I was an engineer, I did that very successfully. I brought complex material down to earth so that most people could understand it. I did that as a deacon too. I simplified the scripture. So my process of writing is to simplify it and then make it real. Okay. A question. I'm intrigued by your diverse background. Is there a connection between your varied experiences and the worlds of your writing? Absolutely. We all have different experiences. Don't let them go. When you become a writer, use them. I use magic. In the first book, The Deacon, there's a lot of magic I do in that book for the various characters. On my website, you can find more about me, more about my books, and there's a magic page, so you can see me doing magic tricks. So again, I've used magic throughout my life, and all the experiences as an engineer, analyzing things, making things simple, I bring into my books. So if you're writing about something completely different, which I encourage you to do than you're used to, it doesn't mean that you have to abandon your experiences. Bring them in. Saving one life is more important than any earthly achievement that we can procure. I believe that was more of a statement, but yes, absolutely it is. And I pride myself on being there for people. I've had some people read the book and come to me and say, Tom, I found out I have liver cancer. And your book really comforted me. I'm not out to sell a lot of books, believe me. In fact, as I mentioned, all the proceeds of The Deacon go to suicide awareness. But when I get a compliment like that, well, that's worth more than selling 10,000 books and being a New York best author, right? Yes, that to me was worth it. If you were to sum your book in one word, what would your word be and why? I would say hope. I would say hope in the midst of tragedy. I would say hope in the midst of confusion. Hope in the midst of rejection. When I made my decision to leave the diaconate, I was rejected by deacons, by priests for making that decision. That hurt me more than anything. I almost felt myself, it was like a grieving all over again. But I would say hope. I would say hope and love. Some people get confused on the word God, but God is love. And open your heart. What was the most challenging time in your life that drove you to begin writing my book? Well, The Deacon was that. Again, it wasn't supposed to be a book. My therapist, was dealing with my grieving, with suicide, with the rejection, right? With trying to make a decision. And the reason he told me to write things down, because a lot of, psychologists believe that that's a good way to confront things that are bothering you. And as I kept doing that, I realized that, maybe people could share in this, but rather than just share those things, I sculpted it into a book that made sense. So that's probably what drove me to writing the most. And, again, it's passion. It's from your heart. And, we all can pick up an encyclopedia and read about facts and go on Google and, find about just about anything. But when you have someone, giving their experiences, whether it's through the real experiences of a person or through a character, people hang on to that. We don't have to abandon everything in the past that made us who we are today. That is correct. I would bring that into your writing. Believe me, everyone has a very interesting life. When I went back in the Magnolia, the book I'm writing now, I'm back and I have all this energy and I'm riding my bike again. And I go to the candy store and I'm finding candies that I forgot I even ate back in the day when you can get a candy bar for 5 cents. And, across the street was a bakery and I would buy a brownie for 15 cents, riding my bike with one hand, eating the brownie. It's in the book. Those experiences, especially when you're young. I was fortunate enough to have a great childhood. And I believe that that's where I was the closest to God when I was a child. So upcoming authors, I would say, look through your life, sit down, take time away from everything, away from the internet, away from TV. Sit down by yourself and say, what is it about me that I would like to share? And that's a great start. That's a great start. And then the question becomes, how would you like to share it? Would you like to share it as a memoir of what really happened, or would you like to create a character and share it that way? And then the sky's the limit. What was ever a part of chapter in your book that made you very emotional while writing it? Well, in The Deacon, there was 2 parts. One, I was sharing a part when I was in the hospital and I was called to a room where there was a fire and a couple had lost their child in the fire. And the child, they tried to get a priest, but there was no priest, so they called me. And the whole time I was walking to that room, I was thinking, what on earth could I possibly say? I stopped in the men's room, looked in the mirror, and just said, what can I do? And when I went in the room, it was just so heartbreaking. And I do share my wife's suicide and how that occurred in that same book. So those are 2 areas that were very, very heart-driven. Challenges, well, sometimes things don't come to you. Sometimes you just have to give it a day or 2. And I share everything with my wife. I was married 40 years. After making my decision, I remarried. In fact, my wife's husband died also. And we believe that our spouses brought us together. But there's going to be times when things don't come to you. So you pray about them. You walk away from them. You take a walk and take a day or 2 and, things will come to you. Just start thinking about it. Again, how can I touch people? And they will come to you. They were the biggest challenges I had. Was sometimes I would just, who wants to hear about that, And then you make it interesting. It's a wonderful feeling to come across things that take us back to the most endearing times of our life. Yes, isn't it? I have so many I'm blessed to have so many great memories. Childhood, as I mentioned, riding my bike, climbing a Tarzan swing. My father and my uncle used to kid around and say, "Hey, Tom, there's a lion coming at you. How fast can you get up that Tarzan swing?" So I would climb the Tarzan swing. When I got in high school, no one could climb the ropes. I went up the rope like a monkey because of my childhood. In high school, again, I was blessed to have a great, great high school. And to this day, I listen to music, and some of the music that brings me back it's bittersweet. It's so good, and yet it's sad because it makes me miss those times. I'm fortunate enough to have them. A lot of people are not. So yeah. Our memories are the greatest storytellers, and they are proof that we are truly alive. Absolutely. It's funny, my short-term memory is starting to diminish, but the long-term memory, back when I was a child and a teenager, as I mentioned, are so vivid. And I agree with you, Catherine. Our memories are great storytellers. Why not use them as a starting point? Everything happens for a reason. It's a string of events that tie into one knot. That's beautiful. I do a magic trick similar to that, right? I take a piece of rope and I cut it in half, and then I put it together into one knot. And then I slide the knot off, and I explain various concepts about that. But absolutely, everything that happens in our life happens for a reason. Now, that's difficult to swallow if it's a tragic event. What good could come from that? But believe it or not, when you think about it, there is some good that can come from it. I've had tragedy, obviously, and people have had tragedy. And as time goes on, certainly not right away, but as time goes on, somehow there is a silver lining. I can only imagine about being deacon, but I assume it isn't easy. I'd like to hear your perspective about it. What made you stick to it, being a deacon despite many difficulties? Well, again, being a deacon, and I outlined that in the Deacon and Unexpected Life. It was a 5.5-year process. But every Saturday we would meet, and we formed, the men in the diaconate formed a very close-knit group. We were very close together. Really, we went through all of it together. We had 2 classes a day, or 2 classes a week, and several, parts that we'd have to go outside and become part of. Most people look at a deacon and they think it's just assisting a priest, but it's so many different ministries involved. And you're driven for the same reason that I think, we're all driven. Some people say that they were called to be a priest or called to be a deacon. We are all called, one way or the other. Just a matter of sensing that call. And when you sense a call, then you're driven. You're driven to pursue it. And that's where you get your energy. To accept the past is also accept who you are today. Yes. So true, right? So true. I think there is an author I just read recently with a quote like that. But yeah, you have to, there's many times when I wish I can go back and make a different decision than I did. But, we all make good ones and bad ones. The point is that you go forward, and you got to realize that some were bad. Maybe you did make the wrong decision. But what's it mean to you today? So yes, you're going to make some bad decisions, but we're human. We are human, and that's part of being human. It's always good to find the silver lining in everything. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Joyce. And sometimes it doesn't come right away. Sometimes it takes time. It takes time, and it takes time to be open. With me, I like to meditate. I like to be quiet. I sit down, clear my mind. I used to like transcendental meditation, and just kind of unwind and release a lot of the thoughts that get in our mind. I'm blessed to know you, that your wife used your experiences to be best versions of yourself. Yes. My wife and I, when we met, we knew we wanted to be close. We knew we wanted to be close to God. We knew we wanted something more. And we spend our mornings are blessed. We love our coffee. We love our coffee and discussing, the day. We like to pray. We like to reflect on various writings that we each read. And, we're growing. We're all growing. And it's great to grow together like that. Through my writing, have I experienced a whole new world? Well, geez, I certainly have. Because, once you finish a book, you think you're done. But really, you get insight. And, it does change your life. It's amazing how our life changed so fast, right? In being a deacon, I thought I was going to be a deacon in my retirement, but now I'm doing what I enjoy most as a deacon. I'm just not in the fancy robe, storytelling is a wonderful gift. I love it. I used to always make stories up for the grandkids too. I had my kids too when they were younger, and some very bizarre. So now I get to do it for everybody. I think it's great. So it looks like the questions are coming to an end. I just want to thank you all for putting some time in to listen to me. I think you'll enjoy my books. You can find them all on my website. You can find a little bit about me, and you can get a couple magic tricks there involved too. And I wish everyone well in their storytelling. And again, bring it from your heart. Blaise Pascal said it best, right? Your heart has reasoning that your mind cannot comprehend. And to me, that's what it's all about. All right. So I thank you all. I thank you all for, listening. And I hope you enjoy my books. And I'm going to be looking at some of your books as well. Thank you again.